Hi everyone, it's Dr. Z. Here we are at part 3, Ideologies after Napoleon. We're going to talk about Romanticism and the 19th century revolutions. So the last ideology that you need to understand is Romanticism. And this is an artistic movement. It's not a political ideology, and has nothing to do with love and romance. Romanticism is basically romanticizing the past and thinking emotionally about the world. So taking out the idea of 18th century enlightened reason, right? And erasing that and saying, instead of using reason, let's think emotionally about things instead. Kind of cool. Maybe from a feminist perspective, that's always sort of been my take on it. But so what is it though? All right. It's a lot of different things mixed together. So it can show up as individualism. Excuse me, I'm getting over COVID. Long beards, crazy clothes, anyone defying middle class or bourgeois norms. Okay. It can show up as the heroic, right? Heroes who change society, revolutionaries, things like that. It can show up as a focus on history or historical consciousness, thinking about, and being nostalgic about ancient Rome or being nostalgic about the Middle Ages. I don't know why anyone would, but those kind of things, right? So thinking, anything that sort of romanticizes the past in that way, or looking at it through a new lens, or looking at it with emotion. It doesn't have to be good. It can be emotional. The attraction to anything that's bizarre or unusual. Think about Gothic literature like Edgar Allan Poe or Mary Shelley, right? The book Frankenstein, right? Those are considered romantic pieces of literature. Also, a critique of science and the Enlightenment and reason, being too rigid about things, right? That could be dangerous and that sort of thing. Now, here's the thing though, it's not conservative. It's also not liberal. It's not political. It's artistic. Okay. So with Romanticism, you're going to be looking at many different pieces of art, and you'll do this in another assignment. The last thing we have to talk about here, though, is that at the end of the the middle of the 19th century, the Congress of Vienna led to a bunch of different revolutions. They started out in, the early parts, 1812, 1820, 1825, places like Spain, Portugal, Italy. And other than this War of Greek Independence, which was successful, and historians say it was successful mainly because the British supported it, almost all of these are pretty much failures. And that's sort of the key, right? But what do they want? They're basically all looking for nations. They're saying, hey, we're going to have this nationalist patriotic movement to rule ourselves. We don't want to be ruled by the monarchy, especially if it's a monarchy of outsiders. And what's the cause behind a lot of these revolutions, right? Because the apex of them is in 1848. It's sort of like, if you look at them as think of them as like a chart, right? It's the constantly increasing. Then in 1848, there's this explosion of revolutions across Europe. 1848 in Europe is very much like 1968 in the rest of the world. It's just a very revolutionary time. People are kind of sick of famine and, being, they're frustrated by the Industrial Revolution, industrialism. They're feeling empowered by the political atmospheres behind things like Chartism, right? And they're definitely feeling motivated by nationalist sentiments. And some of that is getting supported by romantic art and music, which sounds very patriotic and is very moving. But these revolutions are going to be largely failures because of the Congress system. The Congress system will squash each and every one of them. So what are some takeaways then? Well, the isms are important. These new ideologies aren't going away, right? Nationalism, socialism, liberalism, they're going to stick around for a while, and they're going to cause some trouble, for better or for worse. Because the revolutions failed, right? Monarchies still had strength, right? Through the 19th century, monarchies are going strong in Europe. Just because the revolutions are there doesn't mean that the monarchies are failing. No, it means actually that they're strong because they were able to suppress these revolutions. Radicals, okay, are going to be condemned. And think about the Carlsbad decrees, right? That's an example there. Liberalism works with nationalism. Okay, so free thought, right? Republicanism, things like that works really well with nationalism. Doesn't work with monarchy. It's very hard to get patriotic about a monarchy. Um, Before Germany and Italy could have liberal constitutions, because both of these are amalgamations of different states, right? And the Germans are sort of united by the Zollverein, and Italy is loosely connected states that really aren't connected at all, and they're ruled by outsiders, different outsiders at that, right? They had to decide to become nations first, right? So they can't have liberalism without nationalism. They have to build the nation before they can be patriotic about it. And they have to build the nation before it can be a republic, right? So Germany and Italy are going to become nation states in the middle of, at the end of all of this in the 1870s. But the kind of ironic part is that to become nations, they're going to have to unify from the top down. So even though this idea of, nations, it's going to happen from the top down. In Italy, it's going to happen by a monarch. Okay, King Victor Emmanuel is going to be making, basically putting Italy together as a country. And in Germany, it's going to be a statesman, Otto von Bismarck, who's going to be really instrumental in putting that together. But it's going to be a lot of different foreign wars that are going to end up happening, right? And that it'll be political machinations from the top down that's going to bring those two governments together, which is kind of an irony, right? Because it's not patriotism and these national unification movements that do it, although they create the groundswell of support for it. But when it actually comes to the nuts and bolts of putting these countries together, as we're going to see coming up the next couple chapters, you will recognize that this is a top-down movement, not a bottom-up revolution. In the end. So those revolutions all do fail, okay, in the 19th century, and that's a big takeaway to take from them. All right, that is about all, my friends. Sorry these were long. It's a lot of stuff to think about here. Take care.